It's 6:30 on April 12th, so we will call the meeting to order and start with the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, with that, do we have any additions to the agenda? Excuse me. Hearing none, I'll look for a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
I'll make that motion.
We have a motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 4-0. That will take us to public comments. If there's anyone who would like to discuss anything that is not on the agenda, please come forward. Thanks, Jen. And seeing none, we will close public comments, move to the consent agenda. Is there anything on the consent agenda that needs to be pulled for further discussion? Hearing none, I'll look for a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I'll move that.
We have a motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second from Helt. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 4-0. And with that, we'll welcome Ryan to the Park Commission as a newly appointed member. So I'm sure they're looking forward to filling that seat. With that, we'll move to 6A1, summer hours.
All right, Mayor and Council, in front of you today is a consideration to approve summer hours for 2021. So historically, the City of Mayor has at times approved summer hours. Current hours are for City Hall 8 to 4:30 Monday through Friday, Public Works 7 to 3:30 Monday through Friday, and this would put the hours at 7 a.m. for City Hall Monday through Thursday, 7 to 4:30, Friday 7 to 11. Public Works would be 6 a.m. to 3:30 Monday through Thursday, and 6 a.m. to 10 on Friday. So with that, my recommendation is to approve summer hours for city staff starting Memorial Day holiday, which is May 31st, 2021, and going until Labor Day holiday on September 6th, 2021. So with that, I would be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Maggie?
Is there any benefit to doing this?
The benefit would be, it is an employee benefit, so it is something that is essentially an employee benefit. Also for Public Works, they tend to have a lot more projects in the summer and starting earlier, less hours in the heat. They can, I guess, spend more time on these projects during the day and plan accordingly through the week. But essentially, it's an employee benefit.
Well, the Public Works they get off at the same time though, except for one day.
Yeah, it's the same for both. So City Hall and Public Works would be, they'd add an hour Monday through Thursday and then just have a shorter day on Friday. So yeah, so there would be an extra day. An extra hour. Some residents do tend to come in earlier throughout the summer, but we also for Fridays we do promote that. As always, that appointments can be set up with staff as well.
Just some additional background for new council members. It's probably our 5th or 6th year doing it. It's I don't think we've had one complaint about it. It has been successful, and it does give advantage to the residents to come in an hour, if maybe stop in before they go to work, where they can get some things approved, maybe some building permits, and as they're putting in fences and doing other things. So it has been beneficial, and I don't think I recall hearing one complaint. And they're good about posting things, and on Fridays when they're closed, they're still available. Maggie's got her phone. They're still available by phone. Public Works is shifted as need be if needed on a Friday. So just as a little more background.
Well, I get the employee benefit, but I still don't think by having you working 4 hours on Friday, I would have rather seen like a rotating shift that somebody gets the whole day off, you know, versus nobody's here at 10 or 11, then,
Yeah, I mean, I know that's been brought up in the past. It is tough because when you only have 2 employees
Right.
within each department, if somebody is gone, then that other person sometimes would then end up having to pick up extra hours. For example, if it was an unexpected, it's just it would take some working through, I guess. But it's just difficult with limited staff to do something like that. That's just my opinion, but
Typically, Fridays too in the summertime are very slow, especially here at City Hall and even in Public Works. I mean, it's big bedroom community, so a lot of people leave town and everything on Fridays, so it's kind of.
so will the seasonal still work till 3:30 on Friday, or will they be done at?
It would be done at the same time Public Works is done.
yeah, and they have less hours too. So
Right.
Yeah, they may
Yeah.
not even
30
be here Friday.
30 hours or something?
yeah, up to 30.
All right, any other questions? Hearing none, I'll look for a motion to approve Resolution 4-12-21-16, implementing summer hours.
Make that motion.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
I'll second it.
We have a motion,
Nikki.
motion, a second, any further discussion?
No, I think it's worked in the past and I don't think we've had any complaints that I've heard. And I do know that they are flexible if something does come up.
Yeah, I agree with that,
Staff.
Nikki. I agree, and I think we're flexible enough if it does become an issue and there's concerns, we'll reassess it halfway through if need be, but, all right, any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Motion carries 3-0. Nay being Melender. Sorry, nay as being Melender. Just for some of that, I want to pick it up for anyone who's watching online, or sometimes it's hard for them to hear who was for and against. With that, Maggie, we'll move to 6A2 Groves Academy.
All right, Mayor and Council, in front of you today is a request from Groves Academy in St. Louis Park. They're looking to refinance part of their 2014 issuance for a project that they performed back then. The City of Mare was the conduit for that project. So they're looking to refinance approximately $3 million for that project and to issue new financing for new building improvements in the amount of $3.6 million. So as you know, back in, just a little history for new council members, back in 2014, the city acted as a conduit for their project then. So we do have a policy that allows us to provide guidance and procedures on scenarios such as these requests. We are working with the same bond counsel as Groves Academy so the request did come through their bond counsel. So how this works is state and federal law does allow local government units to enter in arrangements, and in this case, it would be with Groves Academy and the City of Mare. The issuance of the money or the note would not impact the city's credit rating. The city does have $10 million that it's allowed each year for the purposes of its own government purposes or other 501c3 organizations. So with that, I did talk with the financial advisor. We do have a few projects this year, as you know, the fire station, and then the street project, so that ends up totaling about $5 million. So we do have $5 million left over that we, in our long-term plan, have not identified any projects that we would use that money for. So with this, they would be asking only for $3.6 million for the new part of the project, the refinancing does not count against the 10 million. And so even if we did issue the 3.6 million, we would still have 1.4 still available if for some reason we needed to bond. I don't see any more projects that we would bond for this year, and this is an annual amount. Conduit fee. So the city requires the applicant to assume all expenses related to this process. Per our policy, we base the fee off of a 0.5% of the proposed issuant amount. So with a minimum fee of $5,000 and a maximum of $25,000. Again, that's supposed to cover staff time and other consultants that get involved in this process. In the city, in the past, when we acted as a conduit in 2014, we did receive the full $25,000 in admin fees for that issuance. And so Bond Council and Groves Academy is asking that we just do the fee on the $3 million, which would be $18,000. And so next steps, the next steps would be to accept their request. So to approve the request to act as the conduit in the refinancing portion and the new financing portion in the amount of 6.6 million. And then to approve, so moving forward with that, we could let them know that we are okay acting as the conduit so they can move forward with their process. That would include a public hearing with the city council. And then the second step would be to approve following the city's policy charging the 0.5% of 1% of the new issuance amount. I'm recommending to go with their recommendation, which is to only issue on the new part of it, the new conduit amount, or the new financing part, because we did receive $25,000 for that other part in 2014, and it's not going to count against our 10 million, the refinancing. So my recommendation would be to approve the request and also to approve the fee in the amount of 18,000, not including the 3 million in refinancing costs.
For the first motion then will be Maggie they're just looking for something from us that we'll partner with them and we're willing to work with them.
Yep, that we're willing to move forward. Yep.
Okay, so with that, I'll look for a motion to approve staff to continue working with Groves Academy and partnering as the city mayor partners with the Groves Academy as their conduit financing.
I'll move that.
I'll make that motion. Oh,
We have a motion from Melander. McNeely, you want a second?
sure.
All
I'll
right.
second.
All right, thank you. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
I,
Aye.
Pose same sign. Motion carries 4-0. Now we'll look for if someone would like to make a motion on their request for finance. Now, is this a hard request, Megan, that will be set on this number now, or is it kind of we think we agree with their request?
Yeah.
Things may change as we work or
Things could change, but I think they're trying to get a hard idea of
okay.
of what their total cost would be for this whole package. So I think they're asking for the council to approve
Okay.
a specific fee.
I'll look for a motion then to approve the request from Groves Academy to waive the portion for the refinancing amount, but to collect 0.5% of 1% of the new issuance amount of 3.6 million for an amount of $18,000.
I'll make that motion.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
A second.
We have a motion, and a second. Any further discussion?
So that would be 18,000 even if it was only 3 million or the 3.6?
That'll be 0.5%
mentioned-
of 1%.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're doing the 18,000 off the new financing portion of 3.6.
Okay.
Otherwise, if we did the total amount of 6.6, that would bring it up to the maximum of 25,000. But they're asking, since they already paid the 25,000 on that portion in 2014, that we waive that and just do the new financing.
And if an emergency
So the
came
new
up,
financing, oh, go ahead.
if an emergency came up, we still had 1.6, we could still bond.
1.4, yep,
1.4 to
in
bond.
bonding, but I've talked to the financial advisor, I've looked at our long-term plan, and I don't see anything. Again, there could be some emergency, but I think there's other resources that we could use for emergency scenarios.
Okay.
For emergency, we'll have our reserves.
Right.
Any further discussion? Nikki, did you have something you want to add?
No, I just wanted to confirm the refinance doesn't count towards that 10 million. It was just the new issuance.
Correct.
That was all.
Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 4-0. All right, Megan, that'll take us to 6B, our special guest from the Sheriff's Department.
All right, we're going to pull up a PowerPoint, and we do have Sheriff Jason, I'm going to say your last name wrong, Camerood, here for a verbal report and update for the Carver County Sheriff's Department.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I appreciate the opportunity to come in and talk a little bit.
Welcome.
I think if you recall, a couple of months ago, I had been here and kind of gave a history of contracting and whatnot. Do you want to convert that to, there you go. And I'm kind of viewing this as a part two, but because I think we have some new council members here, and we may very well have people watching via the online version, that I'll kind of rehash some of that.
Perfect.
And so, we've been in the police contracting business in Carver County since 1966. And we've had audits and built mechanisms to ensure equitable costing structures and equitable revenue recapturing through that. And some of that stems from the audits and work that happened through 2 litigation incidents we had with the city of Chaska, wherein they sued us in the mid-'70s and in the mid-'80s. And the argument was the county was providing full police service for these cities and not charging the cities for the full cost of providing that police service, but instead was taxing the entire county to police those cities, which wouldn't have been a problem but for the fact that Chaska has its own police department. So Chaska residents were then, through their county tax dollars, subsidizing local policing. And we resolved both of those lawsuits with an agreement that we would recoup actual costs. And so when you're talking to people about your police contract and the rate, it's important to understand we're only trying to capture our actual costs. There is no profit in there, and we definitely are trying to not provide that service for less than our actual costs, because there's no appetite at the county level to relitigate this again, right? So, but that work, during those audits and stuff, we had to define base level services, and that is police services that the sheriff is statutorily obligated to provide to all residents of the county. And then contract level services was also part of that discussion. And those are things that municipalities and local governments who adopt ordinances or need to have an enforcement arm that they would then have to pay for. And so you would typically do that through a contract, through your own police department, or through a joint powers agreement with another city to build a police department. And then there's kind of this, and I wrote on here the overlapping, and what overlapping is there's kind of these calls for service that you don't really know whether they are base level services or contract level services until you get there and do a little bit of investigation. And an example of that call would be a property damage call. The sheriff is responsible for apprehending felons. So if that property damage is sufficient to trip into the felony category, then it would be a base service and the sheriff's office would investigate that. If it was lower than that threshold, though, it's a misdemeanor and it becomes a local responsibility to resolve. But how do you know what it is till you get there to find out, is it worth more than $1,000 or not? Because that's the threshold on property damage, just whatever. So, so what we do, though, is we have been applying the same analysis through all of, when we make operational decisions and purchasing decisions and whatnot, the question becomes, would this cost exist if we didn't have the police contract? It's the but-for argument. But for the police contract, would this exist? And so there are some things that they're going to exist no matter what. So for example, I wrote the records management system. As the sheriff with statutory responsibilities to keep the peace, apprehend felons, lakes and waterways, all of that stuff, I'm going to have a records management system anyway. And whether I have city police reports in that same system, it doesn't matter. The system has the capacity, so there's no added cost. It is a significant savings, though, because if you had your own police department, you'd have to have your own records management system and do that. But it doesn't cost the base taxpayer any more or less money. So we don't charge for that. The cell phone. This is kind of a gray area for us, where with or without police contracts, we're going to have a pooled data plan, just like many of you probably do at home, right? And if your house is like mine, my wife and we have 5 on the plan. My mother and father-in-law, they don't hardly use any data. My wife uses the phone a little bit. I use it quite a bit for work, and then my daughter burns up whatever's left on the plan. Well, I have the same thing going in the employee group, right? And I have some employees who use a lot of data and others who don't. And are they contract employees? Were they doing contract level work? Were they doing felony work, base work? You just don't know. And so we're going to have a pooled plan. We just provide it. Now, you could reasonably argue that, well, you wouldn't have to have such a big pool if you didn't have contract employees. That's a fair argument. But by the same token, I might have a town like Mayor here where the deputy don't hardly spend any time on the phone. So they're not dipping into the pool anyway, right? So anyway, so we don't charge for that. But then you get into the patrol squad. I just use that as a glaring example. If we didn't have a contract with this city, we wouldn't own a squad car to police it. I wouldn't need it. So that does then become a city cost. And if we go to the next slide, please. So we have that analysis. Would the cost exist? And then we keep our employee groups separate. So we have our county levy-funded employees, which is all of them on the left column, and then the police contract-funded employees. And we don't mix and match. So if you're a contract-funded deputy, you will work in a contract city. And that's the only place you will work on your regular scheduled days. Now, you could, if you're a contract deputy, pick up an overtime shift somewhere else, gets paid through a different deal, but the mayor cop is paid for with mayor dollars and only police is mayor outside of your agreement with your neighbor, right? All of that. So we keep all that really separate, and that's done on purpose because it gets, some people tend to wonder, well, how do we know we're getting our value when you start mixing and matching? Well, your cop is only in your town and in your partner's city town, so you're getting it. So then we go into the contract costing structure, and here again, I'm trying to arm you guys with some information so that you can talk with your constituents about this. And also, we're going into the budget season, and so you're gonna ask, well, why does the contract cost X? Well, here's how we get there. We look at the average cost of the FTE, and that includes wages, shift differential, para, health insurance, all of those things that are in their collective bargaining agreement. And then we do use an average OT when we're talking about collective employees. And we have very few of those, but we do have them. And by collective employee, what I mean is, if you go back to the previous slide, you would note, you don't have to, but you'll see that there was that, there's 37 cops who are funded through contract. Well, 37 cops generates a lot of reports. And I needed records support staff, because I wouldn't, there's a tipping point, right, where the base staff is no longer sufficient to process all of that. And when we hit that tipping point, we had to hire a records specialist to manage those reports. And so each city funds a piece of that employee to do that work. So, and so it's a record staff and one sergeant, because your employee is not a sergeant, they need supervision, and so you share that cost with all of the other cities. Other equipment and tools, pursuant to the contract, the county provides the initial issue for uniforms and equipment. You'll note, though, that as the employee wears out the pants, needs a new flashlight, boots, whatever it happens to be, then that is coming through on the uniform allowance piece of the FTE cost calculation. So we set up with the new stuff, you pay for the stuff that gets used. And same thing happens with a car. When we provide the car, and then you are offsetting our costs through mileage reimbursement, and we use the FBI model, or the IRS model, sorry. And then we have, we go over to the overhead piece. When you're looking at your contract, you'll see that what's included in your vehicle cost is the mileage rate, but also then we take the squad equipment that's in there. The car is the cheap part. It's, you know, a car's $25,000, and the equipment that's in it is 30-something by the time, when you buy them all new and upfit them. And, but each piece of equipment has a certain life expectancy, and so we amortize that out, bundle that into the car, and then that's how we arrive at the cost for the car. We also have some supervision, some records support. That's where you see that collective FTE in your overhead cost. And we bundle in there any other item that would not exist but for the contract would fall under overhead. What we don't charge, though, that cities benefit from is elective training that deputies go to. The city pays, if you read your police contract, you pay for the minimum stuff that is required for the deputy to retain his or her license. That's in the FTE cost. If the deputy wants to go to some supplemental training that is good for the organization, good for the city maybe, or good for the employee's career, that's elective training. We provide that to the employee, and we cover that. It's kind of shared, actually. We provide the books and tuition, and the city provides some of the wages, depending upon how that's structured. So, but we don't charge for any portion of pooled services. We don't charge for the financial or the management support that's in there. You know, Commander Wooleen, who's here with me tonight, oversees all of the contracts and the contract policing, and there's no charge built into that mechanism for that. And then vehicle upfitting, which is another big one. We used to do it in-house, and now we ship it out, and there's a cost there. But my point is, there are a lot of charges that could be rolled in there, but it gets to be too weird about, is it actually their cost? And so we try to, you know, keep it bright lined. We know that employee wouldn't work here but for the contract, so you're gonna pay for that. So,
It seems like a fair balance.
well, that's what we're striking to do, is to capture the bulk of the actual costs. And this is that model there is our agreement with the city of Chaska. That we had to agree to a methodology for how we would calculate costs. And so when you see things come and go, where on the contracts, when the numbers come in, there's no profit there for us. And those are our costs. We add them up, we divide by the number of contract deputies we have, and that's how we get there for you. So I also wanted to talk a little bit about how we determine your staffing numbers, because I think a lot of people want to know, why do we need 2 cops or 3 or 1? And how did we get there? It's not some arbitrary number that we get to. So what we do is we try to use a model that is based on actual workload. And I think it's a little bit better than some other mechanisms. There's a lot of ways people do it. They'll say, oh, we should have 1 cop per 1,000 people. Well, that's an okay model, maybe. What if you have a high population and they all leave every day, and your population is 0 during the daytime and, whatever it is at night? Bedroom communities are that. What if the demographics are, it's really heavy retail, and so theft and shoplifting, that kind of stuff, drives those numbers up, but you're in a low population area. Think of like where the Medford Mall is in the township. If they did a 1 per 1,000, I don't know that they'd even generate a cop, but the sheriff's office is there a lot because of the theft from the mall. Anyway, so I'm not sure that's a good deal. So what we do is we do a calculation, and we'll get to it a little bit later, but the part I want to talk about is how we divvy the time up. What we try to do is make sure that we have 1/3 of the employee's time allocated to calls for service. Our records management system tells us what time a call was dispatched, what time the officer finished the call. And so we know how much time was spent on a call for service. We know how long it takes to write a report, and on an average. We also know how many calls for service typically generate a report. And so based on all of that, we can figure out how much time you would need on call for service. So that's 1/3 of the officer's time. The next part is 1/3 of it is on admin. Every employee has administrative tasks that they have to do, right? No matter where you work, even if you're self-employed, you got to fill out some paperwork. You got to attend sexual harassment training, fill out your timesheet. In the deputy's case, they got to fill the car with gas. They got to wash the car. They got to prep their equipment and inspect their car. And we call it kind of just admin, kind of things that every employee does. And we know that that takes about 1/3 of their time. And then the next part we get into this is unobligated proactive time. And we try to make that to be about 1/3 as well for purposes of the calculation. We use 1/3 in unobligated because what that does is it ensures that the officer has enough free time to get after some city issues. If you want additional patrols, or you got the community festival coming up and you want the deputy to be able to go there and chop it up with people and community outreach pieces, that's a good use of the time, and it's important to do that stuff. So we have to build that into our staffing recommendation. It also ensures that one of the things that's not great about this model is when you have a day that isn't average, you can end up short-staffed. And so by having that little gap of unobligated time, we can account for those days. So that's why we do it that way. Some cities get to choose how you can increase your unobligated time so that frees up time to do some of those other things. And or you could decrease it if you said, you know what, that's not important to us. We just want them to take their calls and do whatever, the admin stuff. We're good with that. So, and I'll just run you through a quick, if you go to the next slide, there's just a quick breakdown to kind of show how it goes. This isn't your city, but in this city, we know we had 2,900 hours of calls for service, and we multiplied that by 3 because it's 1/3, right? So each time slot. They need 8,900 hours of police service. We know that an employee books out at 2,080 in your city, because they work 2,080 hours a year, 40-hour work week. We have a lot of deputies who work 84-hour pay period, so that would be 2,184 a year, but that's not the number that matters. That's the number we schedule. But because the employees get sick, go on vacation, they're off patrol to go to training, things like that, when we book them out for 2,184, we get 1,800 hours of time where they're actually in the car doing calls for service, admin, and unobligated time. So you just take the time you had, the 8,900, divide by 1,836, and you end up with 4.86 employees is what it takes. Not 5 deputies, right? Because so it's a pretty simple thing, but and I'm kind of in the weeds here, but I'm trying to demonstrate that this isn't an arbitrary thing. And so when we connect with you on the police contract and say, based on the call load, you need 0.65?
It was a little bit higher than that, but that number certainly fluctuated from last year. Obviously, there was a COVID impact. It was a little higher, like 0.8 last year.
Okay.
But dropped, or I shouldn't say dropped, but more like 0.65 is what the analysis was for.
Yeah,
for this
so we know from the math, we're somewhere gonna be between 0.8 and 0.65, right? Is where you need to be based on this kind of analysis. Now, if you didn't have a neighboring community who wanted to buy to buy up the rest of that time, well, I can't provide 0.8 of an employee, so you'd have to buy up to the 1. But it works out great having neighboring communities who want to buy up that other time. And the city could also make a different decision that says, like in the case of Victoria, where they said, we want to have 24-hour coverage. And so they bought way more, well, not way more, but 1 employee more than the workload called for. And that was just a policy decision they made. So moving on from that, I want to kind of plant the seed here with you. I won't go through all this because she has a copy of this presentation so you can read it yourselves. But one of the things that I've noticed over the last quite a while in Carver County, like 30 years, we haven't had a great coordinated conversation with our cities about what public safety could and should look like in each individual city, but also throughout the county. And, you know, I think cities who have their own police departments and, you know, fire departments, and you have a fire department, but when we start getting into full-time fire chiefs and full-time police chiefs and police departments, well, they probably meet with your city manager every Tuesday at 9 for the staff meeting. And you kind of go away on strategic planning sessions and things of that nature to kind of say, hey, what is this city going to look like as we grow? What will our public safety needs look like as we grow? Because it's going to look different if you have young families coming in with young kids versus if you are building elderly housing. Those, right? It's going to look a lot different. So just an observation that, you know, we just haven't really been having a good coordinated effort on that. And so I've mentioned to the city managers and city administrators that I think it's time for them to have a little conversation with their city councils and see if that's a discussion they want to have. If the city has no appetite for that conversation, you know, that's okay too. I think it's a good thing to do though, and to, you know, kind of look and project. So, and part of that is one of the problems we have in this model is because we're contracted, and some people, it's like when you hire a company to come and paint the stripes on the parking lot, you know, you negotiate how much paint and square footage and the cost of the sweeper, and then you just make sure it's clean when they show up and they do it, and that's it. I don't view this contract this way. You know, your constituents are my constituents, and I think they're looking for us to have a coordinated effort in how we're going to deliver government services. And so that's part of why I'm suggesting that these are the kinds of conversations we ought to be having. But you were elected to represent the city, and so if that's not the direction you want to go, I'm okay. I've got to take some responsibility on the lack of strategic discussion, and it's not because it's not important to me. I have been focused on some other things. Absolutely not an excuse, but that is the reason. It's not like I've been loafing for the last 2 years. And, but I think those cooperative discussions are worth having. So,
I agree.
I certainly agree with that. That, you know, it seems a lot of our discussion starts coming a little too late as the contract is getting there, getting in front of us.
Yeah.
We should have had some of this strategic discussions sooner. So I think we could certainly improve on that and get something on a work session sooner and time to reach out to
Good.
either of you two when needed, and
that's good.
we could certainly improve on that and kind of get a good idea where we want to go and how, like I said, how are things looking? And getting some of the experts in there and some of the recommendations and meeting more with the town deputy and some of what are you're here day to day. What do you see? What are your thoughts on some of that?
Yep.
So I think
Yep, that's exactly right.
I think we can improve on a lot of that.
So, and
I think we do get to some of the right conversations. I just think we're under the gun on it. We're not getting it soon enough in the process.
right, yep, and I think we can correct that a little bit, being I'm trying to, I went to a city the other week, and there was a council member on there who says, I've been doing this 10 years, and I think this is the first time the sheriff has been here. I know that's not entirely true, but I know that what he's telling me is we're not there enough, that we're not having enough interaction. If you had I bet you your fire chief is in here once a month anyway, right? And probably more now because
More
of the
often.
fire
Well,
station
yeah.
planning, but.
For sure. Yeah.
And so, our role, as your, Mike, as your police chief, we can do that. So I just,
But that is still a two-way street also.
yeah,
I mean, the council, they got to take some responsibility, reach out too and connect and make those phone calls or get someone in here when needed too. So, I mean, hopefully people acknowledge that aspect of it too.
yeah, no, I appreciate that. I just want to talk quickly about some of the things that we did do over the last couple of years. I mean, in addition to the 45,000 calls for service each year and the 500,000 calls into our dispatch center and police reports, and I forget the number of inmate meals served. It's some crazy, it's a very high number. It's, well into the thousands of meals served every year. But we did a bunch of other things too. I talked about in 2018, we were really working on trying to figure out how to get after mental health and mental health calls for service. And so in 2019, when I took office, I started working with Rod Franks, the director of the Health and Human Services in Carver County, and we put crisis workers in our dispatch center, in the PSAP, and they are basically, it's like your 911 hotline sort of thing. And so we have them right in the comm center, and that is helpful when you have a crisis. The dispatchers are getting real-time information from the crisis call takers and vice versa, and they're starting the de-escalation process. We created a crisis co-responder position, which this is a crisis therapist who goes on mental health calls with law enforcement. Law enforcement goes to the call, make sure it's safe. Crisis therapist comes in and then provides that immediate mental health service. What that does is, prior to the co-responder, only about 25%, give or take, of mental health calls reached the statutory threshold for transport to the hospital for mental health evaluation. So it was cops who are not mental health experts talking to the person, making an assessment, and 75% of the time, again, give or take, they didn't have the authority to do anything other than, you don't appear to be an immediate threat to yourself or others, good luck, call these folks on Monday, right? Putting that co-responder in there, every person on a mental health call is getting professional services that day. And they get those services that they would have gotten had they gone to the hospital. And it might just be a quick little counseling. It might be a quick little medication assessment. It might be just calming the waters and agreeing to come back in a day or two and follow up. And so we've been doing that, and the patrol staff is telling me that it is one of the best services, supplemental services they've seen, because they realize they are not prepared to deal with all of that. So,
I assume that'll be a big focus also going on the next couple years also.
it is. I'm not shy about it. I'm asking the board for another one. Because I showed earlier that on a 2184 schedule, you get 1832 hours, right? So on this crisis therapist, I'm gonna guess roughly 35 hours a week, 32 hours a week of actual work time from her, because she trains and gets sick and goes on vacations and all that. Well, there's 168 hours in a week. That means 80% of the time I don't have somebody available to do that co-response. And so I'm gonna ask the board for another one. We'll see what they say.
Good.
It's important, I think. And it's important for Health and Human Services too, because the sooner they can get them in, get in the intervention, the easier it is on the back end, right? It's just about catching them further upstream, right? So anyway, you might have heard there was a minor little pandemic this last year, and this team hustled to make sure that things worked out well for us. We got through it, no layoffs, no major exposures. We only have 15 full-time dispatchers. If I had to, because of exposure, quarantine half of them, I'd be in trouble to stay awake or to stay alive 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. And so we got really fortunate there. No major exposures in our jail, which that is, that can be a big-time health issue in the facility, budget buster, because when they're in our facility, we're responsible for all their medical care. So we made good decisions, so we kind of built our own luck, but I will say we did get lucky. No loss of productivity. We sent a lot of people home to work from home, and we actually found they like it. I heard you talking earlier about the employee benefits, and for some of my employees who have been every bit as effective in home office and they seem to enjoy it, I'm gonna be hard pressed to tell them they gotta start coming to Chaska Monday through Friday going forward. So we'll talk about that internally about what we do. Made some changes to our organization, updated our policy manual. That's a pretty heavy lift because, I'm sure if you guys have tried to do it, it's a lot of work. And social media presence. COVID actually necessitated this. I had wanted to do more social media work because that's kind of how people are doing community outreach these days. And we simply didn't have a choice because of COVID, because I couldn't see them in person. Couldn't get to I didn't even get to the fish fry this year, yesterday, right? But normally I'd go to those things, and that's how I'd get a chance to visit with folks and learn about what their thoughts are. So social media has been a big helper for that. Trying to build some cultural competency with the employees. We got a changing demographic, and more so on the east side of the county than on the west side. But it's real important that the employees be prepared through their training and skill development to be able to respond to that. I also started a work group. We call it Crucial Conversations, and it's because to me it is very important work. There is a percentage of our residents who do not feel that their voice is being heard by their elected officials. And so I said, come talk to me. So I built a team of people, pretty diverse backgrounds and experiences, and we're trying to build a mechanism to do some community outreach to make sure that those voices are heard. And then, new technologies is what we've been doing. So I feel like we've accomplished a lot in 2 years. And it doesn't look like much when I put it on paper, but I know you folks all know that's a lot. Plus, we did all the other stuff we've been doing for the last 150 years. So with that, I would stand for any questions, things that you want to talk about or want to know more about.
Any question? Well, first, I appreciate this. This is great and a great understanding and having it all in one presentation of how you get to where we are in the contract. I think that helps and hopefully helps new council members. Because I don't even know if I've seen it in this format with it all together myself in 15 years.
Okay.
So it's a great presentation. So if we can get a copy of that, that'd be great.
For sure. She's got one.
Okay,
Yep.
good, good. So with that, any questions then about specific items or anything else? And
No, I think he covered everything.
how about, maybe getting a little off topic then, maybe on some of the stuff going on here in Minneapolis and specific things? How are we set? I mean, how's that working for Carver County? Now, if there's an emergency or if it moves into this county, how are we set? We have our preparedness plan. Where's this driving from? Will it be the county board?
Great question. From the policing part, it's my team is doing that. And so, like today, for example, you know that there's a threat of civil unrest based on an officer-involved shooting in Brooklyn Center. What we have done, because we're far enough west and we feel like we're pretty good, but we also want to be reasonably prepared. So we ran a full complement of staff today, right? So people who were off had to come in, or they backfilled the shift through some other thing. And then we added 2 deputies to the mix. So we're +2 for tonight and tomorrow during the day. We have our investigative unit monitoring social media and working with other local law enforcement to gather intelligence and see. We know, for example, there is a planned demonstration into Eden Prairie, and based on their organizational efforts, they have an interest into coming into Chanhassen. We've seen them. It's a small group, and it's people exercising their First Amendment right. Absolutely no problem. But we're still going to, check in on them once in a while and make sure that's how it is. And so we're staffed to be able to do that. We have a standing agreement. We're really more of a support role than being concerned about what's going on. So we kind of have a standing agreement with Eden Prairie, for example, where if they arrest somebody, they bring them to our jail versus trying to take them to Minneapolis. And then when the waters are calmed, they'll pick them up and take them from Carver County down to the Hennepin County Jail. And so we're providing some bedding for them and that kind of stuff. And at this point, we have no reason to have any concerns.
Right. No, and I understand that, but
We're trying to just be reasonably prepared.
from a procedure standpoint, if things did turn, who's making those ultimate decisions? If we were going to implement a curfew, does that come from the governor? Does that come from our emergency management, which would maybe be you? Or if you needed, something went on and there was something not peaceful, and do you have a direct line to the governor and get the National Guard to help if needed, or?
Yeah, great question.
How does that?
I was texting with the county administrator in the parking lot before, because I read in the newspaper that the governor declared the curfew in Hennepin, Ramsey, and Anoka County, and had subsequently added Dakota County to the mix, leaving Carver and Scott County out of that mix. And I thought, well, my recollection was that the local elected officials had some say in that. And so I'm not really sure on the answer to that. What I do know is that Commissioner Harrington, who works for the governor, the Department of Public Safety, has been communicative with law enforcement. And I'm very confident that if the governor were intending to declare a curfew in Carver County, for example, John Harrington would have been on the phone with me talking about that.
I suppose that would be the first point of contact.
Yeah, because he's got to make sure he's got cops here who are going to enforce it. And
And, yeah, I don't foresee anything, obviously. I was just more asking how it went.
Yep, no, that's good. And I do have the answer to the other question. I don't have the governor's phone number, but I do have access to the Metro group, so that if for example, we had something that really turned into a chaotic event here, I have access to Commissioner Harrington and his resources and whatnot, and of course, he has access to the
Yeah.
governor if we would need,
Yep.
if it really got to that point, but.
Okay. No, good.
But I feel like we're pretty well positioned here in Carver County. And I'm very pleased with the support we've had from our citizenry and the work of my team who, you know, in Chanhassen, for example, because we thought that demonstration might come to Chan, we've been coordinating with their fire department because if they do start rioting, that involves fires and, you know, all that kind of stuff. And so there's pretty good teamwork going on there, trying to put together a plan, so.
Perfect. All right, anything else? For either the commander or the sheriff, either one? Well,
Oh,
thank
I
you.
think they've heard enough from me.
Yeah, thank you both for coming in. I appreciate it.
No, I appreciate the opportunity to come in and talk, and we're gonna try to have this be less frequent, right?
Yeah, it'd be great.
I think that's what I heard from them. so.
Yep, and I
Thank you.
appreciate everything you guys
Thank you
do
so
with the
much.
department, all that. Thank you for everything.
Yes, thank you very much.
All right, Maggie, let's move on to 6C1 roundabout. Thank you.
All right, Mayor and Council, in front of you is some information regarding the roundabout off of, or on Highway 25 coming into Mayor. So in the past, the city council has, we've been working through landscaping the roundabout and possibly putting a sign welcoming people into town as they come off of 7, traveling south into Mayor. So included in your packet are 2 concepts that were put together for the city. It shows the 82-foot roundabout with a 30-foot garden design in the middle. So both designs have low-level annual plants, and Kyle can maybe explain this a little bit better than me, but it's low-level annual plants with mulch or rocks and designed to be low maintenance, so the annuals would, oh wait, is it? Yeah, so what we're trying to focus on low maintenance, low maintenance design. So with that, we've been working with MnDOT to get approval on the landscaping sections and then the signs. So I did include 2 signs that we were thinking about as well. One matches the south sign, so it's the concrete decorative block. And then the other one is a post sign. This is something that the Park Commission is kind of looking at right now, but this would say, like welcome, or a rising community, or whatever we want underneath, if we want something underneath. So as of today, I did get an email from MnDOT stating that either sign would work. We just need to do the permitting process when we want to move forward. So the landscaping portion, we're estimating to be about $15,000 to $20,000. That includes reseeding the outer edge and then planting the garden area. This was budgeted in the 2021 City Beautification Fund. And then staff is estimating the sign portion, depending on the type of sign we go with, to be about $3,500 to $15,000. So depending on the style that we go with. Kyle, do you want to add any more into that?
Yeah, no, I think you covered it all right. The 2 gardens, one garden is fancier than the other garden. The one has some tree, that one is the more simple.
This is more simple, yep.
That one is the more simple one, correct. So it's kind of, they're designed to, you know, the face. You're coming into town, you see the garden, you know, how it's shaped. I don't even know what the shape, like half moon or whatever it is. And then it has the nice outer edge all the way around. Everything comes back, a lot of prairie grasses. Similar plants to what we have at the City Monument, the other sign coming into town. This one has some boulders in it, some weeping white spruce, a couple other, fancier, small trees and that sort of thing. This one's a little bit more money, not terribly a whole lot more though. Yeah, we just wanted to bring it forward just and then the sign too. So we weren't sure if we wanted to keep it the same as the sign on the south end of town. If we wanted to do it that way, which is significantly quite a bit more money versus a sign similar to what we're looking at putting in the parks, because we're looking at updating the park signs. It would be a little bit bigger and everything than what the park signs are designed right now, but definitely much more cost effective.
Can they make it look like the south sign out of the wood? A little bit more. The only reason I'm thinking of going with the wood sign is, you know, eventually somebody's gonna go over the roundabout.
Right, and the
And then
current,
you've got a $15,000 turd.
my thought too, absolutely. I thought even putting like boulders, boulders like
Right.
around, but no, it,
Well, we have insurance for that.
Right.
right, yeah, and then it'd be, if they were to hit the sign, if they hit this type of sign, then it, it'd definitely cause some damage, but it'd probably stop the car pretty abruptly, but the other sign, it would, if we just had a couple, mounts in the ground, it would just hopefully knock over, But, these are maintenance-free signs, they're not wood signs, they're all, they're all, I think aluminum is what they were speccing, so.
So those plans that you have, that one, 1 and 2, did a landscaping company make those, or is that something you guys did?
Landscaping company.
That was done, okay, well, they'd be doing all the installation, they'd be putting all that, include them
Everything except the
install.
sign.
Okay,
The sign would be built,
Alright.
we can have the sign company install it, but it'd be real simple for Public Works to install it.
I don't mind the first, I'm open to either of the options, it'd be more kind of is the plan then to have Public Works do the maintenance, or would it be every year bringing in the landscape company?
Maintenance
have
is
them-
we go in there with a weed whip pretty much every year, weed whip it all down, rake it all out. Depending on if we do rock or mulch, I can't remember what the quote had, I think it might be mulch. We would then remulch it every year, whatever we want to do, which would be pretty simple and straightforward.
I think both will look good, it kind of comes down.
Yeah,
to
anything's gonna look
Public
better
Works.
than,
What's it gonna, easiest for you from a maintenance standpoint? Plowing, getting around, having stuff in the way.
yep,
I'm looking at that. As far as the sign, I would prefer it to match the south one. I think that seems big to me for that space. I don't know if it has to be 120 by 68 by 16, but it could maybe a smaller scaled down
I mean,
version.
it's 80 feet, I mean, that roundabout's
I
pretty
think
big.
once it's up there, you're gonna
You're-
be surprised
yeah.
how it's gonna look okay.
Yeah, no, so you guys are thinking more of a,
I
This
prefer that.
route?
I prefer that.
I do too.
I like to.
I do too.
okay. Yeah, so yeah, I'm not sure what the city paid for this sign back in the past, but we can definitely, now that, I don't want to have a contractor get a quote on it, just to be like,
Right.
no, so, but no, we can definitely call, because the company that I'm working with actually put this on in back in the day. Might have been called something different, but.
Do we need electricity in, or is it already out there?
There is no electricity there. If we were to want to do that, we'd have to like directionally bore and I'll do all kinds of stuff to get it there. If we want to put a light on it, it would have to be solar.
Oh,
Is it something we wanna consider decoration?
Or Christmas decorations, that's what. Yeah, that would,
I maybe not a good idea with this plow and slush and.
I mean, in the middle of the roundabout, I think we're gonna be all right, because that's why we were only doing a 30-foot garden. I mean, it's 80 feet wide, then we have a nice buffer around the edge, kind of give it that nice frame.
when we get into the lights, then MinDOT will weigh in, I'm sure a lot more, they'll have a lot more of an opinion on that.
That was one of
They
the
do
questions.
ask that question. I guess we could get pricing on what that would cost.
Yeah, we'd have to directionally bore and,
Definitely think we should at least get a couple lights facing up.
I think you
on
should
the
look
side.
at solar lights. Those aren't very expensive.
they're not.
Just in the winter. The winter might get tricky with the snow covering them, but
Right.
I think we start with solar lights. I don't think we need to
Solar
bore
li-
anything if it's like
I would agree.
expensive.
I would agree.
Solar lights to light up the sign, but then Christmas lights would have to be, I don't know, we'd have to ask MinDOT if they would even allow Christmas lights in. Yeah,
I
we
could
got 'em
ask a
on the
little,
side.
I could ask a few more
We
questions.
can't do anything off the light poles near it to light up the sign, right? Because that'd probably be blinding to drivers coming around the roundabout.
Okay, no, yeah, we can definitely get some more price. I mean, it'll be, significantly more money, but, I mean, it is the face of the community when you come into town, so it would be, definitely, yep.
Yeah, this was, again, this goes back to quite a few years when this was installed. The big piece of this roundabout was to kind of have a nice entrance into town and really get that beautification. And it's just taken us longer to get there and start getting the funds available for it, so. But it's
So,
certainly something that's been on the radar for years.
Do you guys want to keep it almost exactly the same, or would you want to change up anything with it to make it similar, but different, or
Keep it the same.
keep it the same? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I think for your maintenance aspect, whatever's easiest, whatever you come in and whack everything down and then,
Yeah, okay. No, yeah, that's a very helpful, so I know we can go and get more pricing and hopefully have more for you at the next council meeting, so.
That gives you enough direction for now, then?
Absolutely, yep.
Nikki, is there anything else you want to add?
Nope. Thank you.
Yep. All right. With that, then, I guess, Maggie, I guess we'll go to council reports. Chad, do you have any reports?
Not at this time. Got a park board meeting tomorrow night. Hopefully
Perfect.
discuss some more signs.
You're doing your trail cleanup tomorrow, too?
Yep.
Perfect, that's good. Larry, anything to report on?
no, just we meet, I believe, next week with the Watertown Mayor Community Ed.
Okay. How about you, Nikki, anything?
No, I do not.
All right, I have nothing at this time either, so then we will move to 8, other business, council member voter resignation and declaring vacancy.
All right, Mayor and Council, in front of you tonight is a resolution. It is number 4-12-21-17 that accepts Councilmember Eric Boder's resignation from the Mayor City Council. It also declares a vacancy on the Mayor City Council and the process for appointment to that vacancy on the Mayor City Council. So as you know, as you're aware, Eric Boder did submit a resignation by email from the City Council on April 6th, effective today. That resignation becomes effective upon approval by the City Council. And so once that is approved, there will be a vacancy. And so the City Council will be required to fill that vacancy by appointment. So the appointment process includes residents of the city. And so what I'm recommending is that residents who wish to be considered for appointment to fill the vacancy to apply by submitting a letter stating their interest in the appointment to me. I will accept letters until Friday, April 30th at 4:30 p.m. And then the City Council will act on filling the vacancy at its May 10th, 2021 regular meeting. And with that, we would encourage all applicants who have submitted a letter of interest to attend that meeting, and then they would have the opportunity to provide a statement to the City Council as to why they would be best to fill that vacancy. With the resignation, in addition, there will be vacancies to the vice mayor position and council liaison appointments. That's for Carver County leaders and the Planning Commission. So what I'm recommending is that the City Council appoint a new vice mayor at this meeting and consider waiting for the council liaison appointments at a future meeting until we get a new person for those two. So my recommendation is to approve that resolution, accepting Eric's resignation, and then declaring the vacancy and establishing the timeline, and then making a motion designating a new council member as vice mayor.
All right, I'll look for a motion to approve Resolution 4-12-21-17 that would accept Councilmember Boder's resignation effective April 12th, 2021, and declaring a vacancy in the City Council effective immediately, and establish a timeline and process for the appointments to fill the vacancy.
I'll make that motion.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
Second?
We have a motion, and a second. Any further discussion? So with that, I'll just, on behalf of all the residents, Councilmember Boder was going to be here at the meeting today, have every intention to, because of the unrest and curfews going on related to his job. He had to be at work today, so he wasn't able to be there. So I do want to thank him for, I think he's in his 11th year of city council, his commitment to the community. It's been great having him as a council member, and more so even than his commitment as council members, he's been a volunteer firefighter for numerous years. He was with the Carver County Sheriff's Department for a lot of years, so he's really served the community in many different ways, not just mayor, but the entire county. So I do thank him for that. You know, like I said, more than just his civic duties. So with that, unless there's any other discussion, we'll take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
I would just like to say
Go ahead, Nikki, I'm sorry. No, go ahead.
I just wanted to say thank you to Eric as well for serving with him for, I think we're at like 6 years together on the council. I really appreciate all his service.
Perfect,
That
thank
was
you.
it.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 4-0. With that, I would like to make a motion to designate Councilmember McNeely as vice mayor.
I'll second.
We have a motion, a second. Any further discussion?
Good choice.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 4-0. All right, with that, I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion, a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 4-0. We are adjourned.